Custom deep dive. We are so glad you are here with us. Picture this. You're in a conversation, someone asks you a question in English, and suddenly your brain just hits you with a loading screen.
Oh, yeah. The dreaded buffering wheel.
Right. You're buffering. The other person is waiting. Maybe they're nodding politely, but in your head, you are frantically scrambling.
You're grabbing their English words, dragging them over to your native language.
Exactly, to figure out what they mean. And then you're formulating your response in your native language and desperately hunting for the English vocabulary to translate it back before the silence gets, awkward.
But by the time you finally open your mouth to speak, the moment has passed.
Yeah, the conversation has already moved on.
It's a deeply frustrating experience, and honestly, it's the exact reason why so many people feel like they can study a language for years but never actually feel fluent. That internal loading screen is the ultimate bottleneck.
It really reminds me of assembling flat-pack furniture.
Oh, that's a good comparison.
Right. Like when you learn a new complex skill, you rely on a manual. You lay out all the parts, you look at the little 2D diagram, you find piece A, and you consciously, deliberately figure out how it connects to piece B.
It takes a ton of mental energy to translate those tiny drawings into physical actions.
It really does. And eventually, sure, you get a chair. But imagine if every single time you wanted to sit down, you had to mentally pull out that instruction manual and, calculate the physics of assembling the chair all over again.
You'd have to verify the bolts before you could put your weight on it.
Exactly. You'd be exhausted before you even took a seat. You would be constantly preparing for the action, rather than just performing the action, which completely defeats the purpose of having the chair.
Yeah, and yet when we look at how people use a new language, that is exactly what millions of us are doing every single day in our heads. We are pulling out the manual for every single word.
We really are. And that is exactly what we are focusing on today. We are cracking open a highly focused piece of source material. It's a short but incredibly dense excerpt titled Mastering the Internal Monologue, Thinking in English, and it features one central commanding directive. Stop translating in your head. Think in English, step by step.
It's a commanding title for sure, because the stakes here are incredibly high.
Yeah.
Shifting your internal monologue isn't just about expanding your vocabulary or perfecting your pronunciation.
Right.
It is about fundamentally changing how your brain processes thoughts in real time. When you attempt to change that inner voice, you are quite literally rewiring the infrastructure of your cognition.
Okay, let's unpack this. The source material bluntly tells the reader to stop translating in your head. It doesn't say, try to translate less. It says stop.
Yeah, a hard stop.
But if doing this is so inefficient, and if it makes us feel like we're constantly lagging behind in conversations, why does the brain default to this two-step translation process in the first place? Why do we torture ourselves with the internal manual?
Well, because the brain is inherently lazy. And I don't mean that as an insult. It's just a biological survival mechanism.
It wants to save energy.
Exactly. The brain consumes a massive amount of energy, so it always looks for the path of least resistance. What's fascinating here is the actual mechanics of that two-step cognitive process you mentioned.
Okay, break that down for us.
So, step one, you have a feeling or a thought, and your brain instantly formulates that thought in your native language. That native language is basically an 8-lane paved superhighway in your brain.
You've been driving on it since you were a toddler.
Right. The neural pathways are heavily insulated with a substance called myelin, which makes the electrical signals travel incredibly fast.
So the native language thought arrives almost instantaneously.
Yes, practically zero friction. But then comes step two. You take that fully formed native sentence and you search for the English equivalents. You run it through the grammar rules, check the verb tenses, swap out the vocabulary, and then finally produce the English sentence out loud. You are forcing your prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain responsible for complex, conscious planning to work overtime.
So even though the two-step process takes longer overall and makes us buffer in conversation, the brain still prefers it because using that native language superhighway for the first step just feels safer.
Yeah, it feels guaranteed. The alternative, which is jumping straight from a raw thought to English, feels like standing at the edge of a dense, overgrown jungle with a dull machete.
There's no pathway there yet.
None. So the brain panics and retreats to the paved highway, even if it means having to take a massive detour through Translation City before you can finally speak.
That makes so much sense. But the source is identifying this exact structural flaw. By commanding you to stop translating, it's telling you that you simply cannot achieve conversational flow if your brain is constantly running a background translation app that eats up all your processing power.
Right, it's draining the battery.
Yeah. And think about your own habits right now. Are you caught in this buffering stage when you try to communicate, you hear a question, and instead of just reacting, you feel that little spinning wheel in your head,
Frantically fetching the native word.
finding the English match, checking the grammar, and then speaking?
Yeah.
If that's your process, you aren't really present in the conversation. You're just managing translation software.
And that lag destroys the rhythm of human interaction. Language isn't just an exchange of raw data, it's about timing, tone, nuance, and connection.
Definitely.
If you were stuck in that two-step translation process, you miss the subtle jokes, you miss the emotional subtext, you become a stressed-out observer of the conversation, constantly trying to catch up rather than an active participant.
Yeah, that buffering delay doesn't just ruin the conversation. It practically alienates you from the person you're talking to. Which really makes me wonder if this inner voice, this native language superhighway, is so deeply ingrained, how do we actually change the language it speaks?
Well, the source calls this mastering the internal monologue.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because I have to push back on that word, mastering.
Oh, really? Why is that?
Well, because when I think about my own internal monologue, it feels deeply, stubbornly subconscious. Like it just bubbles up unprompted. If I'm cooking and I accidentally touch a hot pan, my brain doesn't politely ask me what language I'd like to react in.
No, the reaction is instantaneous.
Exactly. My inner voice yelps, it curses, it narrates my day completely without my permission. So the idea of mastering it implies bringing something that is inherently unconscious under deliberate conscious control.
Mm-hmm.
Is it really possible to just flip a switch and command your subconscious to speak a new language?
It's a crucial distinction you're making there. And no, you cannot just flip a switch. If we connect this to the bigger picture, that is exactly why the source doesn't say switching your internal monologue. It uses the word mastering. It explicitly frames the internal monologue as a discipline. It's a skill to be honed over time through friction, not something that magically happens just because you memorized a flashcard deck.
So it requires you to actively police your own thoughts.
Mm.
I mean, that sounds exhausting.
Oh, it is incredibly exhausting, especially in the beginning. You have to essentially catch your own brain in the act of thinking, interrupt it, and then redirect it.
It's like becoming the director of a movie inside your own head.
Mm.
You literally have to yell, "Cut," when your brain starts narrating the scene in your native language and force the actors to do the scene again in English.
That's a perfect way to visualize it. Going back to our jungle analogy, when you yell cut and force the thought into English, you are taking that dull machete and hacking a few feet into the brush.
It's slow and difficult.
Very. And your brain will fight you because it wants to go back to the highway. But every single time you consciously force your internal monologue into English, you are treading down the weeds.
They're building the path.
Yes. The principle of neuroplasticity, specifically Hebb's law, which states that neurons that fire together wire together, means that the more you force this connection, the easier it gets. The 100th time you do it, there's a dirt path. The 1000th time, it's paved. But you have to introduce that deliberate friction first.
But practically speaking, how does someone actually do that without losing their mind? Trying to police your thoughts 24/7 sounds like a fast track to a migraine.
It really does.
We know we need to stop buffering, and we
Yeah.
know we need to hack a new path through the jungle, but what is the actual mechanism? This brings us to the final, crucial phrase from our source excerpt. Think in English, step by step.
This raises an important question, right? How do you actually apply that? That step by step is the lifeline. It's the practical application that takes this from a lofty psychological theory to an actionable daily habit.
Because if you try to hack the entire jungle path in one day, you're going to burn out immediately.
Oh, instantly. You will just give up.
There is so much relief in that step-by-step framework. It really brings to mind learning to drive a manual transmission car. Do you remember what that feels like at first?
Oh, vividly. It's terrifying. Every limb is doing something different.
Right. At first, every single gear shift is this calculated, deeply stressful thought process. You're approaching a stoplight and your brain is screaming, okay, clutch in, ease off the gas, move the stick to second. Wait, where's second?
Yeah, trying to find it without looking.
Exactly. Okay, found it, ease off the clutch, add gas. It takes up 100% of your cognitive bandwidth. You can't listen to the radio.
Yeah.
You can't talk to the person in the passenger seat.
Yeah.
You are just trying not to stall the car in the middle of an intersection.
You are fully engaged in a conscious mechanical process, and honestly, it's the exact same cognitive load as translating vocabulary in your head.
But then, step by step, over weeks and months of driving, that terrifying calculation becomes pure muscle memory. Until one day, you drive all the way to work, parallel park, turn off the engine, and you suddenly realize you didn't consciously think about shifting gears a single time.
Your body just did it.
Yeah, the car became an extension of you.
And that is the exact goal of the step-by-step method for thinking in English. You want the language to become an automatic extension of your cognition, just like the clutch and the gear shift.
So how do we apply this? If I'm trying to rewire my inner voice today, what does clutch in gear shift actually look like? Do I just try to start narrating my entire grocery shopping trip in English?
Oh, absolutely not. If you try to narrate your entire grocery trip on day one, you are trying to drive the manual car on the freeway during rush hour,
Bad idea.
you will stall, you'll get frustrated, the cognitive fatigue will be overwhelming, and you'll immediately revert to your native language. The step-by-step rewiring requires you to start with the absolute basics. Step one is simply labeling the physical world around you.
Okay, so just nouns. No verbs, no complex sentences.
Just nouns. You are sitting in your living room, you look at a table, and before your brain can supply the native word, you consciously think, table. You look at the window, you think window. You look at your shoe, you think shoe.
You aren't building sentences yet.
No, not at all. You are just attaching English labels directly to visual stimuli, bypassing the native language entirely.
You're laying down the very first layer of dirt on that new jungle path.
Yes. You are forcing the brain to associate the visual concept of a table directly with the English word, skipping the native language intermediary. And you do this until it becomes a habit. Every time you walk into a room, your brain should start quietly listing the English nouns.
Okay, but what happens when I don't know the word for something? Say I look at a coaster on the coffee table and I just don't know the English word for it. Doesn't that break the immersion?
It's a great hurdle to bring up because it will happen constantly. When you hit a vocabulary gap, the rule of the step-by-step method is to not panic and not immediately translate.
So what do you do?
First, try to describe it with the English words you do have, like small plate for cup.
Oh, I like that.
Yeah, and if you can't do that, you make a mental note, look it up later, and just move on to the next object. The goal isn't perfect vocabulary. The goal is maintaining the English operational mode in your brain.
Got it. So once I can sit in my living room and point at lamps and chairs in English without getting a headache, what's step two?
Step two is moving from static objects to simple reactive thoughts. This is where you start tapping into emotional and physical states. You wake up and you consciously force your brain to think, I am tired. You drink a glass of water and think, this is cold.
Okay.
Or you stub your toe, to go back to your earlier example, and maybe you can't suppress the initial native language yelp, but immediately after you force the thought, that hurts.
But importantly, you are forcing the inner voice to generate those thoughts natively in English. You aren't thinking, I am tired in your mother tongue and then translating it. You are trying to summon the feeling of fatigue and attach it directly to the English phrase.
Exactly. That is the core of the entire exercise. You are building simple subject-verb-adjective constructions that are tied directly to your physical reality. And as you practice this, slowly building up the complexity of that internal monologue, you are deliberately crowding out the native language translation.
So it's a progression. You go from naming objects to simple physical reactions, and then what? Narrating actions.
Yes, narrating your immediate reality. I am walking to the store. I need to buy milk. The sky is cloudy. You essentially become the boring narrator of your own life.
That's hilarious, but it makes sense.
And the reason this is so vital is that you are practicing grammar and sentence structure in a low-stakes environment. You aren't buffering in front of a native speaker. You are buffering in the privacy of your own mind.
Which totally removes the anxiety.
Completely. And eventually, over months of this deliberate practice, you arrive at complex, abstract thought. You find yourself weighing the pros and cons of a career change entirely in English. But the step-by-step part isn't just a motivational phrase. It's a biological requirement for how the brain builds those new neural pathways.
You have to myelinate the simple circuits before you can build the complex ones.
Precisely.
I feel like we have to address the frustration factor here, though. Because as you describe this, spending weeks just pointing at windows and narrating my walk to the grocery store, I mean, it sounds incredibly tedious.
Oh, it is.
And I can imagine a learner hitting week 2 of this, feeling massive cognitive fatigue and thinking, you know what, this isn't working, I'm just going back to translating.
Cognitive fatigue is the #1 reason people abandon this method. Your brain will literally feel tired because you are forcing it to consume more glucose to build these new pathways. It is a biological exhaustion. You have to normalize that fatigue. Understand that feeling tired means the rewiring is actually happening. When you go to the gym and lift weights, your muscles burn, and you accept that as a sign of growth. You have to accept the mental burn of thinking in English as the exact same kind of growth.
So what does this all mean? When we pull all of this together for you listening right now, we can see exactly what the source is trying to teach us. The journey from translating to thinking is a deliberate, structured process that respects the brain's need to adapt gradually.
Right.
You can't just skip to the end. You have to stall the manual car a few times. You have to sit in your living room and point at lamps and chairs like a toddler. But that conscious, sometimes awkward and often exhausting effort is the only bridge to genuine unconscious fluency.
It's an exercise in respecting the process of habit formation. Your native language internal monologue is just a habit you've practiced every day since you were born. It is the deepest habit you possess.
Yeah, that makes sense.
To build a new one alongside it, you have to start ridiculously small and be ruthlessly consistent. The biggest barriers to language learning aren't always external factors like bad textbooks or confusing grammar rules. They are the invisible, stubborn habits of our own minds.
The ultimate goal of language learning isn't just knowing more words or passing a proficiency test. The ultimate goal is actively stopping the internal translator. It's about taking conscious control of the internal monologue, introducing that difficult friction, and replacing the native voice with English through a patient step-by-step progression until the jungle path turns into a paved road.
And this really proves that true fluency is as much a psychological shift as it is a linguistic one. You aren't just memorizing data, you are changing how your mind operates on a foundational biological level.
It's a massive undertaking, but the reward is true. Effortless connection. No more buffering, no more watching the conversation pass you by while you scramble for words in the background. But before we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave you with one final, slightly provocative thought to mull over on your own.
Oh, I like these.
We talked earlier about how the internal monologue is the most intimate voice we have. It's the voice that judges, that reacts, that narrates our deepest fears and hopes, and ultimately defines our reality. Well, if our internal monologue shapes how we perceive the world, and you successfully rewire yours to think entirely in English, step by step, does mastering a new internal monologue actually change a part of who you are? If you throw away the old instruction manual and start building the furniture of your thoughts with entirely different linguistic tools, does the final product, your personality, look different?
That is a fascinating question.
Something to think about the next time you catch yourself buffering. Until next time, keep diving deep.